Sabrina 70s comic, issue 18. Sabrina complains that she's being forced to babysit a weird cousin of hers on her date with Harvey. Hilda says that the adults will be busy elsewhere. This makes me wonder why she doesn't make her do this every time she has a date. Because she could get the kid between her and Harvey. Hilda and Ambrose have to attend an important witches' coven. Is she gonna explain more than that? Come on, that wasn't enough. She should have said that she had jury duty. Sabrina complains that her cousin is a monster, and Hilda tells her to not leave Brucey alone with Harvey. Since when did she care about Harvey? I guess she's only saying this because she doesn't want Sabrina to get upset if Brucey does something. They can undo what Brucey does. Why won't Sabrina just freeze Brucey in time for the entire time he's being babysat? If she's a witch, you'd think she'd just use magic on him right away so that he wouldn't be able to misbehave. Couldn't she brainwash him to being good temporarily? So she's gonna look like an idiot the whole story because she'll forget she's a witch. This isn't how a witch babysitter would behave. Harvey's nice enough to agree to still go on the date even when she's babysitting. He warps right behind him, and I notice that her cousin has fangs. He happily says he'll behave and flatters her, and she doesn't trust him. If she doesn't trust him, why doesn't she use magic to resolve the whole conflict? Harvey wants to play games with him, so Brucey blindfolds him and turns him into a smelly gorilla or something. This wouldn't be so frustrating if Brucey enchanted her magic away the second he saw her. Why doesn't she enchant his magic away? In the show, we saw that witches could be made to put their magic in a bottle, but the show's not canon to this. Sabrina returns Harvey to normal, and doesn't use magic on Brucey, because fuck learning lessons. Even though he blindfolds himself, he can still chase Harvey properly, because he has a radar like a bat. Hilda warps back home, saying that the meeting was dull, so she cut out early. Wait a minute. If she's not afraid of getting punished for doing that, and is so casual about it that she probably did it before, then why'd she even go to the meeting? They check to see if the witches go, but they don't make sure they'd stay. Wouldn't everyone just go and then warp home? Wouldn't there be a roll call at the end to prevent this? Hilda immediately assumes this penguin is Harvey, wearing a penguin suit, and asks him to stop dripping on his rug, as if he can help it. It could have been Sabrina for all she knew, though. Sabrina turns Harvey back to normal and lies that she has a bad headache to get him to agree to go home, and the story ends with him telling his mother he doesn't even remember how he got home, as he's got seaweed on his shoulder. You'd think that would have been zapped away when he was warped home. I wonder if Sabrina's immediate family, Hilda, is the only part of the Spellmans that has a teenager that could babysit Bruce. That has to be why she was saddled with him, despite how big her family seems to be. Too bad Ambrose couldn't have babysat him. In the next story, Hilda asks why Harvey's showing up at her house early on a Saturday. She sure does have a soft side for Sabrina if instead of pointing at him to force him to walk away, she's gonna let him help paint Sabrina's room. Just because he wants to help, even though he's clumsy. The writer has to know how much of an idiot Sabrina is. Why is Hilda the only one who's right in these situations? Wouldn't Zelda and Ambrose also object? I guess Hilda would think that an anti-clumsiness speller potion would be doing a good deed, so Witch can't get away with doing that. Would it be selfish too? Hilda says that she could zap up a new paint job in seconds, and Sabrina insists that she wants to be like a normal teenager. Should you really be making the audience side with Hilda? That's the only relatable person here. Like, she knows the plot is forced, so why does it have to be that way? She only seems to care about doing stuff the mortal way if it has to do with her bedroom. Couldn't Hilda just brainwash Sabrina into changing her mind? She sure is sweet if she thinks that's wrong. I guess she changed her mind after a potion makes Sabrina evil sprung a leak, and she thought that was too evil to try again. We should have seen her apologize for that, but that's the episodic nature of the stories. Hilda uses magic to make Harvey unable to pick up the paint cans and laughs, and she should have predicted that Sabrina would undo her spell. So Hilda gets smacked with the can and says that the phone's ringing, and fortunately Harvey's nice enough to apologize. I guess Harvey was out of earshot when Sabrina mentioned magic. He doesn't look out of earshot. I guess Sabrina made him forget about that off screen as soon as he questioned it. Hilda trips and asks what that paint can is doing out in the hall, tripping because she was holding a basket of clothes. Wait, why was she carrying it to a destination? Why didn't she teleport to every room she wanted to go to? So I guess witches are smart enough to realize that they should still walk to some places, because if they didn't get any exercise, then they'd just keep gaining weight. So that's why they don't teleport to literally every destination. Harvey says that it was there because it was empty, and Hilda doesn't know what Sabrina sees in him either. Sabrina tells him to learn his lesson from earlier, and he says that it isn't his fault if she doesn't look where she's walking. Does he only say sorry to people so he wouldn't be in as much trouble? Because that's another time he's refused responsibility. How did he expect her to look where she was walking when carrying a basket of clothes? He somehow doesn't know why Hilda always blames him, even after everything that's happened. He asks where Sabrina wants the empty. It sure is nice of him to agree to paint her room as a date. It's hard to imagine the average boyfriend doing that for a date. At least he's loyal, for now. Hilda's upset that Harvey still has that can sitting there and wants to kick it out the window. The story ends with her somehow having paint all over her and wanting to see Harvey. That was frustrating. It's too bad Hilda doesn't have anywhere else to go. She doesn't have to deal with Harvey. Couldn't she just work to a spa? I guess she's not made of money. In the comedy page, Sabrina uses her magic on a ski slope, saying that she's learned how to make snowmobiles and trees voider. You'd think she'd have known that years ago. It ends with her skiing into a brick wall because she wasn't looking ahead, and she's somehow awake and alive after that. And Hilda's somehow in a good mood. Anyways, in the next story, Ambrose isn't happy about reading about all the evil in the world in the newspaper. Then Sabrina accidentally splashes them with a bucket of water, and fortunately apologizes. She says she's been helping Hilda do housework. She was emptying the scrub bucket on the petunias, which thrive on dirty, soapy water. Hilda likes petunias? That sure is nice of a stereotypical witch. If the petunias thriving on that kind of water is unrealistic, maybe they're magical petunias. Ambrose asks Sabrina why she didn't just carry the water bucket to the flowers, and Sabrina says that she's got the power, so she should use it. She just flip-flops between wanting to be a normal teenager and being like this. At least keep it consistent. Somehow, Ambrose thinks it's a waste to use magic on mundane things, because, oh, it's childish. No, it's childish to say what he's saying. It'd be a great waste to not use magic for mundane things. Because considering how her life is, that means she'd never use her magic. Because she has a mundane life. Hilda would agree. Her powers would get rusty. So why is he like this? He gets pelted with garbage. Sabrina calls Hilda a kid with a smile, and Saz finally says, Cousin Ambrose says what you just did is childish. Hilda says satisfyingly, What's childish? You got in the way of the garbage? That's clumsy. Well, now she is childish. Why didn't she just warp the garbage to where she wanted it to go? Out of complete nowhere, Ambrose reveals that she might wear out her powers because if you overuse them, you'd have to have a 24-hour recharge. Okay, this is trying to make magic make more logical sense. And it goes well with the idea that witches have a magic battery that needs an annual... Wait, what? If they can just recharge their magic in 24 hours, then why do they need to lose it entirely for 3 days every year? That was implying that they had way more magic in their battery, which made sense because it's magic. How much magic would they have to use that they'd have to recharge for a third of the time early? Probably way too much. This thing is reminding me of the spell charges from Final Fantasy 1. You use your magic spells too much, you'll run out and have to sleep in the inn or in a tent to get some MP back. It makes sense because it runs off the same logic that when you do enough normal things, you wear out your stamina. Hilda calls Ambrose a worrywart. So I'm guessing the story's gonna have him be right, even though he's never been right about this before. The doorbell rings, and an old woman unrealistically greets her happily, calling herself a slob. and Hilda asks if she's bragging or complaining. The woman says that slob is an acronym. Why would her group have an embarrassing catchphrase, they have to say? Sabrina says that her group helps clean up parts of the town that get run down and go to seed. So why would they pick that acronym? She's looking for new members, and says that their town park is too full of litter. Out of complete nowhere, Hilda happily agrees to help the park. I thought only Sabrina would. I thought Hilda was the stereotypical evil witch, and would tell Sabrina not to be so cooperative. Unless she's actually got an evil plan and wants to make things worse. If she was sincere about this, then that's good, and it kinda makes sense because she already has a soft side by liking Sabrina and flowers. But it's still out of character. Ambrose lampshades this, and Hilda has a selfish justification, saying that it pays to keep an eye on the good side of the right people, because you might need a favor. Why would a witch think she'd need favors from mortals? Oh, how predictable. Sabrina and Hilda can't use magic to clean up the litter. And then Ambrose is a complete asshole by refusing to clean it up for them, and even sitting there and watching them do all the work. They already learned their lesson when they ran out of magic. Why wouldn't the old woman be mad at him for just sitting there and not helping? Once witches have invented something that would make sure they know their MP count at all times? This is not a satisfying ending. It's not as good for the escapism, because you once fantasized that this would be a problem if you had witch powers. A good ending would show Hilda getting revenge on Ambrose. And this is exactly what I mean when I say that I don't know which side Ambrose is on. He's the good witch to Hilda sometimes. In the first story, Sabrina had to babysit a bratty kid cousin of hers. Never seen that one before. The creativity that you look forward to is that you never know what exact spell he's going to use on Harvey. But the whole time I was just frustrated by Sabrina because she was too stupid to just use magic to prevent Brucey from abusing his. Why didn't she take away his magic for the day? Freeze him in time. A witch wouldn't have this problem. If her family is a bunch of long-living witches, logically her family would have a lot of members from all the children they'd end up having over the years. So you'd think Sabrina wouldn't be the one saddled with the kid. So she wouldn't be the only teenager in her family. And it's so lazy that we don't know what Hilda's meeting was about. It's not like Harvey does anything to deserve Brucey's abuse, which could have made this funnier. In the second story, it's yet another story with the premise that Harvey causes trouble in Sabrina's house because he's a stupid klutz. This time, Hilda trips on a paint can he left out when he was painting Sabrina's room. You'd think Sabrina would have known better than to invite him here at this point. Is it impossible to zap the clumsiness out of him? Isn't that what spells are for? So the whole story was about Hilda suffering, but she had every reason to be mad. So it wasn't satisfying when she was the only relatable one in the story. The third story reveals that if witches use their magic too much, they lose them for 24 hours while they recharge. I guess they're recharging by getting the natural magic around them out of the air, which has such a small amount of magic that it takes 24 hours to add up to anything, and isn't as powerful as what was left on that magic book. So that's fortunately a justification for why Ambrose thinks using magic for mundane purposes is wasting it. Okay, but doesn't he realize that their lives are so mundane that if they don't use magic for mundane things, they'll never use it? And then they'll get rusty? It's not like they're constantly throwing fireballs at monsters. If he thinks using magic to clean the house is childish, what is magic good for? Aside from saving your life, which is an extreme case that's almost guaranteed not to happen. He's the one being childish. You'd think witches would have a way to see their MP number at will, specifically to prevent them being too conservative with it, which is what would happen if you were playing an RPG where the MP count was invisible. That could have easily avoided the ending. There's a reason that nonsense would never happen, so why would it happen in Sabrina's universe? Witches want magic to be used. Ambrose being like this would make sense if he was immortal, so he'd be against magic, but he's not. Thank goodness. And he ends the story being selfish and petty enough to do nothing to clean up the litter in the park, while Sabrina and even Hilda have to clean it up the normal way. He just sits there and watches them, and somehow he's not called out on it. And the story doesn't end with him getting his comeuppance. What makes him think this would be a waste of his powers? He doesn't say that it's because he hates mortals, but that has to be it. But then why is Hilda doing this? It's good to show her soft side, but it's ridiculous. So Sabrina just gets punished for wanting to do something good. She doesn't even end the story being happy that she did all the hard work the proper way, which would be in line with her character. She can't seem to decide whether she wants to shun magic or embrace it.